So I was browsing Reddit this morning. Something caught my eye. Apparently, our hosts are going to start limiting recommendations of certain health and fitness videos to European teenagers, notably those which idealize certain body types. Be interesting to see if that's also applied to fat acceptance style videos, which promote woefully unhealthy and in potentially lethal lifestyles, but we shall see. I don't think that they will, but I am always happy to be proved wrong on matters such as this, although I rarely am. So obviously, I'm in the UK. We left the EU. No, I didn't vote in the Brexit referendum. I don't care. It makes no difference to my life either way, and I was right in that. But question is, will it come to this country as well, to our great nation? I don't know, is the answer. Although I suspect that it might, because of the online harms bill and this whole legal but harmful content that they're looking to restrict access to. And obviously, what is harmful? Well, now it seems that the argument, at least by the EU, has been put forward that health and fitness videos are harmful because they encourage people to take responsibility for themselves, to be strong and in shape, to become leaders in their communities. All things that governments tend not to like as a general rule, at least not like, late 20th and 21st century governments anyway. So it is fascinating. It is fascinating. And it's something that's worth thinking about too, just in terms of the direction of travel, where are we headed? I haven't got the exact stats on me at the moment, but there's something called the Health Survey for England that's done every year, and it, amongst other things, it collates the kind of overweight and obesity statistics. And we're now at a point where the high 60%, so I want to say around 68% of the adult UK populations, that's 16 to, or maybe 18 to 75 plus, or to death really, are overweight or obese. That's shocking, isn't it? There's well over 1 in 2 of the people that you see walking down your local high street are overweight or obese. Now, I make no secret of the fact that I'm a raving socialist. But you don't even have to be a socialist who is supportive of, for example, universal healthcare, as I am, albeit not the NHS, subtle but important difference, to see how this is going to have tremendous impacts on society in terms of the cost burden of illness and disability, and through kind of conditions associated with being overweight or obese. People are going to get sicker, younger, and also because when you're young, you're much better able to survive various diseases. So if you have a stroke when you're in your 40s, for example, obviously depending on the severity of the stroke, but in aggregate, you're broadly more likely to survive a fair bit longer than someone who is in their 70s or their 80s who would have a stroke. And you're going to survive most likely with lifelong dependence on medication, potentially a need for home care, so sort of help with washing, dressing, activities of daily living, that sort of stuff. All of this carries a cost, and you're also not able to work, so you're not able to contribute to the as a, you become a net recipient of taxation rather than a net contributor, and over time you can see how the whole thing can just collapse under the weight, pun intended, of our sizable population. That's this idea of harmful, though. What is harmful? Well, I think it's broadly including subject matter that causes psychological distress to people who read it. So for me to say something like, if you are fat, it is to a greater or lesser extent your fault, absent people who genuinely, through no fault of their own, have landed themselves in that condition. But they tend not to get angry with me, in my experience. But yeah, generally speaking, to a greater or lesser extent, it's your fault. And as a result of this, these are the various consequences that you're going to experience. So your risk of dying early from a heart attack goes through the roof. You'll have issues with self-esteem, self-worth, and so on and so on and so on. All pulled from the NHS website, by the way, before anyone accuses me of making things up for dramatic effect. That can cause people psychological harm. But my counter to that is that, well, surely then we need to be looking at making our population more resilient so they're able to hear these messages and then act upon them appropriately. You know, if someone like me saying on the internet that if you're overweight or obese, here's what the medical experts say is likely to happen to you. You know, that shouldn't be harmful. And what you should be doing is you should be trying to get strong and in shape, because these are the benefits that these same medical experts also say you get for trying to be strong and in shape. Doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense to me. We really should be encouraging people who are quote unquote triggered by this to see a clinical psychologist and get appropriate support for their fragile mental states, more than we should be trying to shut down this critical conversation. They'll also say it's fat shaming. I'm fat shaming. Well, shame's an interesting one. It's Shame is something that is rapidly becoming taboo in the West. You know, because our general philosophy for our society is you can do broadly whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anyone else, which, as I've said before on this podcast and elsewhere, is no basis for a functioning country. You say, oh, well, you can do whatever you like as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. Yeah, it just leads to utter degeneracy that we're seeing. So to question someone's lifestyle choices when they exist in that paradigm is obviously going to shame them, make them feel bad, feel cognitive dissonance, get upset, report people like me to the government or to social media platforms to get me kicked off, that sort of stuff. But shame plays a key role in the moderation of behavior in societies, and we do live in a society like all, although with some individualism is rampant. We do need each other. We need to rely on each other. We need to be strong and in shape for each other, mentally and physically, so that we can help each other through this crazy world in which we live. So you do need an element of shame to stop people from acting in a way that harms the group. And in any case, governments, even our government, for example, is not averse to using shame to change behaviours. So let's look at smoking. Let's look at how smoking's been dealt with over the last 30 or 40 years, right? Smoking is taboo now. And we've just had the recent the new Labour government with Keir Starmer come in and say that they're looking to ban smoking outside of pubs and in a few other outdoor areas to make it even more of a perceived toxic behavior and remove it from public view. Now that is shame. Shame. To show people on the packets of cigarettes the horrific wounds caused by, for example, throat cancer. Or there's that horrible picture of the eye. As one, I don't probably you may not have seen it, but there's one of these cigarette packet labels, warning labels. Is a picture of a human eyeball that's been utterly destroyed by the effects of cigarette smoke. It's all kind of like, it looks like milk. It's truly, if you don't, I don't like eyes. I've got a problem with eyes, and it does hit me quite deep. And that is shame. And the messaging around you're hurting your children. If you live with children and you smoke and they inhale your secondhand smoke, you're harming children. Well, they're going to ban smoking in play parks. I think that's one of the areas. I'm happy to be corrected, but if they say they're going to ban smoking in play parks, outdoor play parks, because it harms children. Well, being overweight or obese harms children because you're setting a terrible example, doubly so if you're their parent. Where's the shame there? Why is that shame not allowed when it causes just as much, potentially more harm to kids? And especially as mental health is the watchword of our times, isn't it? The mental health effects of being overweight or obese are horrific. And I can say that with complete confidence because I was one of those grossly overweight children, and life for me was miserable. Utterly, utterly miserable. And you could equally say that, well, Phil, it was only that way because people like you fat shamed, and that's because of nasty people like you. So really, you're part of the problem. Well, actually, no. I think deep down, we all know right from wrong, and we all know that it's wrong to be so fat that you get a slight headache when you bend down to touch your shoes, or to be out walking and then be met with a slight incline and it make you out of puff, or waking up with joint pain every morning and going to bed with joint pain every night. All of these things I know because I was experiencing this as a teenager. As a fat teenager. I can't imagine what it would be like to be an adult in that situation. Anyway, I am ranting, so I need to bring this to a point to give you some useful information for bearing with me for this long. How would I train if I was fat now? Well, first and foremost, if I was very fat, the first thing I would do would be to go and see a doctor to make sure that it's safe for me to train and get a full physical. Even if it meant paying for it because you can't get it on the NHS, going privately and getting one done to make sure that that I was fit enough to exercise, because exercise does indeed carry risks, and this is not performative arse covering. There is a risk of exercise up to and including death, and if your body's already in a very fragile state because you've neglected it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, then by embarking upon an exercise program, even a very mild to moderate one, could well precipitate an early demise. So I would be getting a physical first, and I would be getting medical clearance. Then once I had medical clearance, I would start too easy. What do I mean by too easy? Well, I shall tell you a wee story. Jess and I have wildly different attitudes towards money. We always have. I think it was born of Jess growing up with an excess of it, and me growing up with, well, didn't not have enough. I had a lovely childhood, but less than an excess of it, if that makes sense. So I've always been a saver, always been a saver. Whereas Jess has kind of saved as an afterthought, or not really had to think about it so much because she's just been showered on high with the green stuff. Or, yeah, how's green? That's very American, isn't it? Showered upon high by pound coins. Sounds dangerous. Anyway, so I've always had a first fruits approach to saving. So whenever I get paid, first thing I do is put money from my current account into a savings account. It's the very first thing I do on payday, so by way of like a standing order or a transfer. Whereas Jess would save at the end of the month. So the problem with the saving at the end of the month thing that we found over the time we've been together, because I've kind of let Jess run the finances because it just works better. She's got a really good head for numbers, so she just runs the finances for us. So we've kind of used Jess's savings approach, and our savings haven't really grown in the way that I would have wanted them to. And the reason for that is very simple: is if you save at the last thing at the end of the month, well, if there's nothing left over, oh well. And dipping into savings is also something that Jess doesn't really think twice about, or up until very recently. Whereas for me, it's like, no, I've been paid, for its simplicity's sake, £2,000 this month. 500 of those pounds going straight into a current account, which means I only have £1,500 to to spend on things that I need. What's all that got to do with training? Well, the way I was able to do that savings approach was because I would pick a number that was too easy for me, so that I knew that every month, without fail, I could guarantee to put that amount of money away as an absolute minimum. And then if I had more at the end, I would put it in. But it was only, I would start, so I would never find myself in a position where I had to go back into my savings to make up the difference. So it might be I said 500, I got paid £2,000, and I'll say £500. Well, that would have been done knowing that I could, even in the very worst month with unforeseen expenses, still put that money away and not have to go into my savings. That was how I did things. And it's much the same with training. You need to pick something that is too easy, that you know that you can do, no matter what happens, no matter how busy work gets, no matter how busy family time stress gets, holidays, whatever. You need to just pick something that you know that you can do. And it goes for all of the activities that you select as well. So it's on a macro scale in terms of the total volume of training that you do, but also on a micro scale for the individual workouts themselves. So if that means that all you know you can manage is one lifting session at the gym, one harder cardio session where you go for a run, and 15-20 minute walk every day without fail, then that is what you do. And then within those sessions themselves, like, well, that one gym session, what's it going to be? Well, okay, fine, it's only going to be 15 minutes or 20 minutes plus warm up and cool down. That's absolutely fine. It's better than what you're doing now, which is presumably nothing. So there's always scope for improvement as well. So in the same with the cardio thing, well, if you're very overweight, the chances of you being able to run a 5K and do that safely and sustainably are effectively zero. I don't care what you did 5 years ago. I don't care what you did 10 years ago. I don't care what you think that you can do now. Just it's just not going to happen. So maybe run a quarter of a mile or half a mile. That's it. And and just it's something that you know that you can do without fail, and then you do it. And then after that, once you've been doing that for a couple of weeks, a few weeks, a month, 2 months, however long it takes, you then earn the right to start doing a little bit more. So maybe double up the gym sessions, double up the hard cardio sessions. So 2 gym sessions, 2 hard cardio sessions, and continue with your walk as it was, or maybe add 5 minutes, whatever. But when you do that, you'd be mindful of the workouts themselves. Do you really need to start doing more in the gym? If you're finding things really easy, then yeah, absolutely add a little bit more. Whatever. Add a little bit more. Feeling the hard cardio sessions, you're doing your half-mile runs, then no problem. Okay, we'll up it to a mile then. That's fine. It's fine. And then again, do that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, a month, 2 months, 6 months. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Training is not something that you should view in terms of days, weeks, and months. It's something that you should view in terms of years and decades. And when you're looking at this, say you're like 30 or 40, and you're like, oh well, I'm still going to be training when I'm 70. The fact that you spend 6 months doing 2 mile runs and 2 half-an-hour gym sessions a week because you're earning the right to do more than that, well, it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter, does it? Because you're going to stick at it and you're going to build that physical fitness, robustness. You're going to start doing things like modifying your routine slightly so that fitness becomes more of a priority. You're going to naturally want to eat better. And you then find yourself in a virtuous cycle, which is where you want to be, because instead of the vicious cycle of training hard, what typically happens? Oh, I'm really fat and I feel rubbish about myself. Okay, well, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to smash it, and you do, and you go and smash it. Hats off for doing that. Most people don't, but you do smash it, and then something happens. Either you get a little bit burnt out, you get injured, work gets busy, family gets busy, whatever. Something happens, causes you some combination of that, and it causes you to fall off the wagon, and then you lose everything that you've worked so hard to gain. And then you get fat again, and then the cycle repeats because you're like, oh, I'm really fat, I need to do something about this. So you smash your face into a wall, get some nice results, then something happens, fall off the wagon, lose the results, get fat again, and so on and so on and so on. Most people who start training find themselves trapped in this cycle. It's just and they either carry on in that cycle forever and go nowhere, or they just quit altogether because they get bored of it. Whereas what you want to do is you want to replace it with a vicious cycle. Oh, sorry, vicious cycle? You want to replace the vicious cycle with a virtuous cycle, which is where you say, oh, okay, I really need to do something about this. Train conservatively, get some nice results, evaluate your progress, add a little bit to your training, train a little more, still conservatively, get some more great results, review where you're at, modify your training, train, and so on and so on and so on. So you're not falling off the wagon, so your results are building upon your results to get you to where you want to be, or as close to it as is possible. All right, I'm done now. That's enough for today. If you like the video, like the video. If you want to help me out, subscribe, please. I have like 8 subscribers at the time of recording. Massively helps me out if you do that. And of course, if you'd like to read more of my writings, you can subscribe to my daily emails. You do that at philtyman.co.uk/report, which is the link on your screen. You get a bribe for that, which is my short ebook, How to Build Muscle and Strength the Natural Way, which I've been told by people who have read it is very useful. Likewise with the daily emails as well. Just to be clear, I do use the daily emails as a vector to sell my products and services. So if you find the idea of paying for information about fitness offensive, then obviously don't subscribe. But otherwise, there's the link if you want it. Thank you for listening.